How difficult is it for a non-league team to qualify for the FA Cup? Well, this season I've attended a game in every qualifying round, starting in the extra preliminary, right back at the start of August, and leading up to last weekend's fourth qualifying round. I had two options when I started this journey, Hucknall Town and Kimberley Miners Welfare, who are both very similar distances from my house. So not only am I going to show you my path, I'm also going to share how my road to Wembley journey would look had I started at Kimberley instead. The extra preliminary round is contested by all the 9th and 10th tier teams, as well as the lowest ranked sides from the 8th tier. I started my journey at the RM Stadium for 9th tier teams Hucknall Town against Bottesford Town, and here's how that one went. The road to Wembley began at the RM Stadium on Saturday. I went to watch Hucknall Town against Bottesford Town in the extra preliminary round of the FA Cup, and I wasn't disappointed. I went to Hucknall Town's old ground, Hucknall Road, a few times. I even played there, but the RM Stadium was a new one for me, as they only moved there in December 2022. The staff at the club shop seemed very proud of their new ground. They informed me that Nigel Clough had opened it, and that Brian Clough had opened Hucknall Road back in the 70s, and they should be proud of it. It's a lovely ground with a friendly, welcoming vibe. Everyone I spoke to seemed really positive and excited for the game, despite the club's less than favourable results on the pitch. Hucknall came into this one off the back of a 1-0 loss at Sleaford and a 5-2 home defeat to Belper United in the league, while Bottesford Town lost their league opener 3-0 at Tadcaster Albion. After a good wander around the pitch, I sat myself down amongst the Hucknall supporters in the main stand, with a decent crowd starting to gather. Hucknall Town are in yellow, while Bottesford Town are in green. As the referee gets them underway, the 2024-25 FA Cup Road to Wembley starts right here. The footage I got from this game is very random. Typically nothing seemed to happen while I had my camera out, but the moment I put it away, that's when the game started to liven up. Hucknall Town started livelier, but it only took a couple of minutes for Bottesford to get a hold of the game, and they looked dangerous every time they got hold of the ball. I commented to my wife that Hucknall were very slow in following up the loose ball, and within seconds of that comment, the Hucknall keeper made a decent save, only for the Bottesford attack to react quickest, and it was 1-0 to the visitors after around 6 minutes. The home side didn't let their heads go down. The game had been fairly even and end-to-end until midway through the first half, when the homekeeper misplaced a pass right to the feet of Bottesford's tricky winger with the goal wide open. The keeper then somehow recovered, and his resulting long ball set up Hucknall's equaliser. I've got no idea how he got away with that, and I really wish I'd caught that on film because it was brilliant. The remainder of the first half was evenly matched with chances and decent saves at both ends. Around 5 minutes before the end of the first half, the visitors won a corner, which was hit dangerously into the 6-yard box. Hucknall's keeper, who'd probably been man of the match up to this point, didn't get great distance on his punch, and Bottesford once again followed up to take the lead. I think there was a case for obstruction on the keeper during the follow-up, but the referee was having none of it. So at half-time, Hucknall Town 1, Bottesford Town 2. The second half started at a frantic pace, with the home side going all out for the equaliser. And what an equaliser it was. 10 minutes into the second half, a corner played out to the edge of the box found Mason Moore, who curled in a Yamal-esque strike for 2-2. I've borrowed these images from Hucknall Town's website so you get the idea. What a goal that was. The teams were level at 2-2 for a mere 5 minutes when, well, I'll show you. I actually caught this one on film. So that made it 3-2 to the visitors, and an entertaining game with half an hour still to play. From that point on, the game seemed to get a bit scrappy, yet still entertaining. There were chances at both ends, but Bottesford looked to adapt a much more counter-attacking strategy, and Hucknall just couldn't find a way through, despite the number of chances they had at the end. Float this one in.
Oh my god, so fucking close.
Yeah. The game finished Hucknall Town 2, Bottesford Town 3, with an attendance of 269. Yeah. Man of the match for me, despite a couple of shaky clearances, would be Hucknall keeper Alfie Smith-Eccles, who pulled off some decent saves and didn't let his errors get to him. That was a really good cup tie. I definitely got my money's worth. It was very entertaining with two sides going for it. I think the result was fair. Bottesford Town were marginally the better side, certainly more clinical in front of goal. So I'll be adopting them now until they go out. Winterton Rangers beat Shepshed Dynamo 3-0, so I'll be attending Bottesford Town against Winterton Rangers in the preliminary round on August the 17th. So Hucknall Town exit the FA Cup, but as they're only 20 minutes down the road from me, I'll be going back to the RM Stadium at some point. If you're a ground hopper or live nearby, I'd strongly recommend a visit to this club. It's really welcoming and run by an enthusiastic group of people who clearly care a lot about the club. I think there's a lot of potential in this team. Maybe there's a lack of confidence among them at the moment, but I hope their fortunes turn around over the coming weeks. It's going out. If you're interested in following my FA Cup journey, please consider subscribing to my channel. I'll be putting up a preview of the preliminary round tie a couple of days before I go, and as always, I'll be documenting the entire journey right here. So I'll see you at the Barnet Steel Stadium in a couple of weeks. My alternative path would have taken me to the Stag Ground for 9th tier Kimberley Miners welfare against 8th tier Cleethorpes Town, which turned out to be a bit of a demolition. The preliminary round saw all the remaining 8th tier sides enter the competition, and because Bottesford Town won at Hucknall, I travelled to Scunthorpe to the Barnet Steel Stadium to watch them take on Winterton Rangers, also of the 9th tier, and their local rivals. On Saturday, I made the 1.5 hour trip to Bottesford on the outskirts of Scunthorpe for the FA Cup preliminary round tie between Bottesford Town and Winterton Rangers. I didn't really know what to expect as this was new territory for me, but the Barnet Steel Stadium was easy to find and had plenty of on-site parking. So after a walk around outside, I went through the turnstiles and was greeted by an incredibly upbeat atmosphere. There's a real buzz about this club. I like to get a souvenir when I visit a new ground, so my first point of interest was the club shop. I'd seen that the club have a wide range of options online, but there wasn't a lot of choice on site. But still, I came away with a neat little pin badge, and let's not forget that this club is undergoing a development. There are plans to expand the club shop over the next few months. I was a bit disappointed that the match programs are online and I was unable to buy a physical copy, but they had that covered too. Just before the game started, I was given a printed team sheet, so I've got something physical to add to my Road to Wembley souvenirs box. After visiting the club shop and having some of their very reasonably priced and much higher than expected quality food, I had a walk around the ground. During my walk around the pitch, I was approached by marketing manager Jason, who invited me to join him in the clubhouse at half-time. I was delighted and a little overwhelmed to discover that Jason had seen my video on their extra preliminary round tie at Hucknall and wanted to give me some more information on the club. I gladly obliged, but before that, there was a first half to watch. Both teams had already won one game to get to this stage. I, of course, watched Bottesford Town beat Hucknall Town in the last round, while Winterton Rangers won their tie 3-0 away at Chelmsford Dynamo. Despite the clubs not having much of a history on the pitch, this was a bit of a rivalry and local derby match. These two sides had ground shared, while Bottesford's Birch Park was being redeveloped into the neat little ground they use today. Not to mention Winterton had poached a couple of players during pre-season. You could tell both sides really wanted to win this game. I sat myself down in one of the two main stands as the referee got the next leg of the road to Wembley underway, and it was Winterton who kicked off. The first half was largely uneventful, but it wasn't boring. It was more a case of two teams cancelling each other out, and it stayed that way until just before half-time, when Bottesford's Luke Aris, who impressed me at Hucknall, dribbled into the box. He lost the ball, but the Winterton defence only cleared as far as the unmarked Aris Cunha, who couldn't miss from a couple of yards out. 1-0 to Bottesford, and it stayed that way until half-time. Go. At half-time, I took a walk over to the clubhouse to meet Jason, who gave me further insight into the club's ambitions and vision for the next few years. Bottesford Town have previously been seen as a small club punching above their weight in this league, but I don't think it'll be long before they outgrow this standard of football. And this year, they've made one of their best starts in this league. There's a real belief that the current management and backroom staff can push them up to step 3 of the non-league pyramid, which is one level below the National League North and South. And I believe them. Jason joined from Scunthorpe United recently and has decades of experience doing marketing for much bigger clubs. This is an exceptionally well organised club with staff members who are clearly passionate about their roles. They have teams of all age groups, 30 different teams in total, and various social clubs who use their ground. These facilities are impressive. I love non-league football, so I could have spoken to Jason all day, but as I walked back to the ground, I heard the cheer. Bottesford's Johnny Niantu had doubled their lead within minutes of the restart. I totally missed it, but I heard it came from another mistake by Winterton at the back. From that point on, it was game management for the hosts, and we did start to see some more urgency from the visitors, but they couldn't find a way through. Winterton created a few chances in the second half, but nothing really troubled Graham Anderson in the Bottesford goal. Though 7 minutes from the end, they got their best chance of the game. A lovely through ball sent the Winterton forward clean through with just the keeper to beat, and somehow he put it wide. That would have brought them back into the game. That was by far their best chance of the afternoon, and moments later it was game over. Aris Cunha caught Winterton on the break, ran through and slotted the ball neatly past Ryan Musselwhite in the visiting goal. 3-0 and no chance of a comeback. I thought Winterton Rangers were a much more well-organised team than Hucknall Town in the last round. Bottesford played a lot better this time round though. They'd given Hucknall several chances to get back into the game, while this time round Winterton were given very few. Although 3-0 was a little harsh on the visitors, Bottesford Town are into the first qualifying round for only the third time in their history. It was tough to choose a man of the match. There were several Bottesford players who I could have chosen, but I have to go with Aris Cunha for his 2 goals. The attendance of 236 is the third highest of Bottesford Town's history. Maybe they can improve on that in the next round. I spoke to the chairman, Howard Pirrie, after the game. His aims for this season are to reach the third round of the FA Vase, an achievement they so nearly managed last season but lost on penalties to Ramsbottom United in the second round. And in the FA Cup they're dreaming of a second qualifying round appearance, with Scunthorpe United at home being the dream tie. Howard also wanted me to give a special mention to club stalwart Andy Alcock, who recently received an award for his long service to the club. Massive congratulations to Andy for that, that's a huge achievement. Well, Bottesford Town, you're now one step closer to the second qualifying round and that potential dream tie against Scunthorpe United. The draw for the first qualifying round was made yesterday and it included all of the teams from the 7th tier. And it's a home tie again. Bottesford Town will play the winners of Deeping Rangers and Loughborough Students, who have a replay to play tonight. So it's back to the Barnet Steel Stadium for me on August the 31st, but who will they play? I'm going to make a short update video with the result of that replay over the next couple of days. Although Deeping or Loughborough would have been closer to home, I'm really looking forward to coming back here. Bottesford Town is a lovely, welcoming club with a great atmosphere and a passionate group of people working behind the scenes. The new ground is extremely well kept and the facilities are suitable for a much higher standard of football. If you're a ground hopper or a football fan wanting to support grassroots, I'd strongly recommend a trip to the Barnet Steel Stadium. So let me know in the comments if you've visited either Bottesford or Winterton Rangers before, and please consider subscribing if you're enjoying my content so far. Lastly, I just want to say thank you to Bottesford Town for making me feel so welcome during my visit. I'll see you in the first qualifying round. In the preliminary round, my alternate path would have taken me to the Linden Club in Grimsby to watch Cleethorpes Town play Quorn, also of the 8th tier, which finished 4-0 to the home side. The first qualifying round saw every team from England's 7th tier enter the competition, and Bottesford Town were drawn at home again, this time against 8th tier Loughborough Students, with both teams looking to reach the second qualifying round for the first time ever. So far, my FA Cup road to Wembley has been the story of Bottesford Town. They've been involved in every game since I began this series. Their journey began in the extra preliminary round where they beat Hucknall Town 3-2 at the RM Stadium. Then they knocked out local rivals Winterton Rangers in the preliminary round with a dominant 3-0 victory at home. On Saturday, I went back to the Barnet Steel Stadium for the first qualifying round tie between Bottesford Town and Loughborough Students. The Students had beaten Bugbrook St Michael's 2-0 in the extra preliminary round and then Deeping Rangers after a replay in the preliminary round and had to go into this one as favourites, being one league above their hosts. If you haven't watched any of my previous videos, Bottesford Town play in the 9th tier of English football while Loughborough Students are in the 8th. One of these teams would make history as neither had ever made it past the first qualifying round before Saturday. When I arrived, there was a tense, yet still extremely positive atmosphere around the ground. Everyone still seemed upbeat, but I could tell the nerves were getting to a few people. Despite only ever visiting the Barnet Steel once previously, I was made to feel like a regular guest. I ran into club chairman Anthony Reeve before I'd even gone into the ground, and invited into the clubhouse for some food at half-time. As they don't have a club shop on site, I bought myself a Bottesford Town bobble hat from their online store. Unfortunately though, it arrived while I was at the game, so I didn't have a chance to bring it with me. I'd also downloaded their match programme before I made the trip, but I was still given a printed team sheet before the game started. In the 2 games since my last visit, the results on the pitch hadn't been brilliant. A 5-1 home loss to Barnet ended their FA Vars campaign way too early, and they'd suffered their first home league defeat to Handsworth in midweek. So following that up with a home tie against higher graded opposition wasn't ideal, but this is the FA Cup, and anything can happen. I went into the tunnel in an attempt to get a better shot of the players coming out onto the pitch, but I'm not sure I really achieved that goal. So here's a few shots of the backs of the players' heads. It was Bottesford Town who kicked off day 3 of the road to Wembley, and could they make history? Bottesford are in blue, while Loughborough are in purple. From the start, it was clear that Loughborough students were going to be the toughest opponent they'd faced so far. They seemed well organised and extremely composed on the ball. As with the previous 2 rounds, my footage was a bit random, as I wanted to be able to enjoy the game as well as get videos, so I missed a lot of the action. This time though, I was given access to Bottesford Town's footage of the whole game, so I was able to put together a bit of a highlights reel for added context. There were a few shots on goal early in the match, but the first real chance came after about 20 minutes when an Aris Cunha header forced the Loughborough keeper into a fine reaction save, and then Loughborough scrambled the follow-up behind for a corner. Aris Cunha had another chance 10 minutes later when he powered through the visiting defence and hit a low shot which was again brilliantly saved by Callaghan in the Loughborough goal. Right on half-time, a deflected shot almost caught out Graham Anderson to give the visitors the lead, but it rolled narrowly wide of the post. And it was all square at the break. 0-0, but an entertaining game with plenty of chances and 2 sides clearly wanting to go for it. A proper cup tie. Bottesford were the better team in the first half. Charlie Callaghan in the visiting goal had been brilliant, making some important saves to keep his side in it. Loughborough students looked dangerous going forward, but the Bottesford defence was solid in that first half. I'd planned to go to the clubhouse at half-time, but by the time I'd finished faffing with my notes, it was nearly time for the teams to come back out. I missed Johnny Niantu's goal in the last round, so I was determined not to miss any of the action here. Loughborough students started the second half brightly, and just a couple of minutes in, they had a glorious chance to take the lead. The ball fell to Joshua Strouts just a couple of yards out, but he seemed to get it stuck under his feet, then hit an off-balance effort wide of the post. That really should have been 1-0, and a huge let-off for the hosts. Just minutes after surviving that scare, Bottesford were in front. Luke Ayres, who has probably been their best player during this cup run, got the ball around 30 yards out, and despite having purple shirts all around him, breezed past their defence to slot home from the edge of the penalty area. 1-0 to Bottesford, and what a finish that was. As expected, Loughborough saw a lot more of the ball from that point on, but the home defence wasn't having any of it. The back 4 totally bossed this game. The last 5 minutes or so got a little scrappy with the visitors desperately searching for the equaliser, and it got even more nervy for the hosts when James Playford was given a second yellow card for kicking the ball away, and Bottesford had to survive the last few minutes with 10 men. But they survived. A fantastic defensive display saw Bottesford Town into the second qualifying round for the first time in their history. Full time, Bottesford Town 1, Loughborough Students 0. Bottesford's number 7, Luke Ayres, was celebrating his 100th appearance for the club, so it was fitting that he should get the winner. Luke is now the club's 13th highest goal scorer of all time with 23, and with the majority of the season still to play, I'm sure that number will continue to rise. Well done, Luke, and congratulations on the 100 appearances. Man of the match, as chosen by the club sponsors, was Bottesford Town's number 3, Blake Gregory, but in reality that could have gone to any one of their back 4. They were brilliant. I want to give a special mention to Loughborough Students goalkeeper Charlie Callaghan though. He made some fantastic saves to keep his side in the game, and he was my man of the match for the visitors. Surprisingly, the attendance of 180 was a little less than in the previous round, but it was still the 7th best attendance in the club's history. Their season average is 127. After the final whistle, I was invited into the changing rooms to meet the players and coaches. They were understandably delighted to take this club on its best ever FA Cup run. I meant to get some videos of the players celebrating, but I got caught up in the moment and totally forgot about it. Maybe I'll be able to get that footage when they get through the next round. After the celebrations, I spoke to first team manager Mike Thompson about the second qualifying round draw and who he'd prefer to play. He was hoping for either a winnable tie at home or one of the big teams from the National League North away. The general feeling amongst the players and staff is that Scunthorpe United, whether home or away, would be the absolute best fixture they could get. And we had to wait a couple of days, but the draw was made yesterday lunchtime, with all the teams from the National League North and South entering at this stage, including my own team, Hereford. But we'll have to wait a little bit longer as it's dependent on another replay, but Bottesford Town will travel to either 8th tier Belper Town or 7th tier Bromsgrove Sporting in the second qualifying round. They played out a 2-2 draw in Derbyshire on Saturday, and no matter who wins that replay, it's going to be a tough test for Bottesford in the next round. But as I mentioned earlier, this is the FA Cup, and anything can happen. Before the draw was announced, I saw a stat on the FA website that only 12 teams from the 9th tier are guaranteed to be playing in the second qualifying round, with several others involved in replays this week, which should give you an idea of how difficult it is for a team at Bottesford's level to reach this stage of the competition. So that's a fantastic achievement already. I had another brilliant experience at the Barnet Steel Stadium. Bottesford Town is such a welcoming club with a great bunch of players and staff. Their current record attendance at the new ground is 280, and I'd love to see them better that this season. So if you happen to be in the area, or if you're into ground hopping, go and give them some support. Thanks to Bottesford Town for such a warm welcome again, and for allowing me to use their footage in this video. I'm going to be posting a quick update after Bromsgrove Sporting play Belper Town at the Victoria Ground tonight. It's a trip to either Derbyshire or Worcestershire for me in the next round. Let me know in the comments if you've been to either of those two clubs, and as always, if you're enjoying my content so far, or just like the sound of my definitely not AI voice, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching. The alternate path would have taken me very close to home with a trip to Malvern Town's Langland Stadium. Malvern Town and Cleethorpes Town are both in the 8th tier, and this one turned out to be a lot closer than the Lincolnshire side's previous rounds, needing a late goal to clinch a 1-0 win. The second qualifying round saw all the teams from the National League North and South come into the competition, so there was potential for a huge tie for some of the smaller clubs. I travelled down to the UK Electrical Stadium to watch Bromsgrove Sporting of the 7th tier take on Bottesford Town. So far, my Road to Wembley series could easily be known as the story of Bottesford Town, as they've featured in every game I've covered. It started at the RM Stadium in the extra preliminary round, where they beat Hucknall Town 3-2 to set up a home tie at the Barnet Steel Stadium against local rivals Winterton Rangers, where they won convincingly in the preliminary round. The first qualifying round gave them their toughest test yet, a home tie against Loughborough Students, who were one league higher. But a solid defensive display and a brilliant solo goal from Luke Ayres was enough to win that game and take Bottesford Town into the second qualifying round for the first time ever. On Saturday, I travelled down to Worcestershire to watch the biggest game in the club's history. They took on Bromsgrove Sporting at the Victoria Ground, or the UK Electrical Stadium as it's now known. Sporting play in the Southern League Premier Division Central, which is one step below the National League North and South and 2 leagues above Bottesford, so this would be one hell of a test. Bromsgrove needed a replay against Belper Town to get through to this stage. A Ryan Snape goal in extra time proved to be the winner after Belper missed a late penalty. The Victoria Ground wasn't a new one for me, in fact going back there brought on a wave of nostalgia. I made a few appearances for Bromsgrove Rovers in the early 2000s before they were liquidated, but hadn't been back since Sporting were formed, so I was really excited to go back there. When I contacted the club beforehand, they warned me that on-site parking was limited, but I didn't have any issue parking at the ground, and for £2 it was really cheap. It's a short walk up the main road from the football club car park to the main entrance, but the parking attendant was a very chatty and helpful man who made sure we knew exactly where we were supposed to be going. After we went in through the main turnstile, I picked up a match programme and went into the club shop, which is positioned right next to the main entrance. And it's an impressive club shop, with a lot of good quality items to choose from. I was in there for a while, but eventually decided on this nice little Bromsgrove sporting hoodie. There's plenty of places to get food and drink at the ground too. There's the Rousler's Bar, which has a good choice of beers and ciders available, as well as the main kiosk behind it, which has a great selection of food. My wife had the pork stuffing and gravy bap, which she wanted me to mention was the best food she's ever had at a football ground, so we might have to come back just for that. Just like with Bottesford and Hucknall, Bromsgrove Sporting have a great bunch of people working at the ground, and there was a really good atmosphere starting to build. The supporters weren't segregated on Saturday, so we were able to wander around and sit wherever we wanted. So for the first half we climbed up the steps into the Thomas Jones stand. The UK Electrical is a proper old school football ground. It had pillars in the way and everything. But overall, it was a great view from the main stand. And out came the two teams, 7th tier Bromsgrove Sporting in their red and white home kit, while 9th tier Bottesford Town are in their green away kit. It was Bromsgrove Sporting who got this FA Cup second qualifying round tie underway. The game started off pretty much as I'd expect it to, with the hosts dominating possession, but due to some solid defending and this great save from Graham Anderson, it stayed 0-0 for most of the first half. It felt like the sort of game where you just knew if Bromsgrove didn't find a way through, then Bottesford would get a chance. And they did. On 30 minutes, it was a glorious chance to take the lead. The Sporting defence lost the ball inside their own half, and Piers Hudson found himself clean through on Charlie Price. But the ball got stuck under his feet, allowing the lightning-fast Axum White to make a crucial challenge. That was a huge let-off for the hosts, but a couple of minutes later, Bottesford had an even bigger chance to take the lead. Sporting goalkeeper Charlie Price brought down Aris Cunha in the penalty area, and the referee pointed to the spot. Cunha took the penalty himself, but it was saved by the Sporting keeper. Just 4 minutes later, Bottesford were punished. Ryan Snape set up Jamie Meadows, who couldn't really miss from just a few yards out, and a sigh of relief went around the ground. Going a goal down after all that would have made it easy for the players' heads to go down, but they didn't. And right on half-time, Bottesford did have the ball in the net, but it was ruled out for offside. Charlie Price had made a fantastic save from a corner, but Cody Collins was in an offside position when he put the ball in the net. And at half-time, it was Bromsgrove Sporting 1, Bottesford Town 0. And that was a first half the visitors should be extremely proud of. They were still in the tie at the halfway point. The game went a little bit flat at the start of the second half. There were a few chances at both ends, but nothing to really trouble either of the goalkeepers until the 76th minute, when Sporting beat the Bottesford offside trap. Graham Anderson, faced with 3 opponents, brought down Harry Crook, and the referee gave a penalty. which Crook scored himself. What is it with Bromsgrove Sporting and penalties this season? At 2-0, with so little time to go, it appeared to be game over, and you could tell that the Bottesford players were starting to get tired. It looked like Sporting might add a few more. They did have the ball in the net. Jamie Meadows' shot came back off the post for Harry Crook to slot home, but he was offside, so the goal didn't stand. Right before the final whistle, James Playford almost caught out Charlie Price with a long-range free kick, but it went just wide. And it finished Bromsgrove Sporting 2, Bottesford Town 0. And how different could that have been if the visitors had taken their chances in the first half?
Final score here at the UK Electrical Stadium. Bromsgrove Sporting 2, Bottesford Town 0.
The attendance was 575. Man of the match for me was Bromsgrove Sporting's Axum White, who was super composed on the ball, seemed to be everywhere and made that important challenge in the first half to deny Pierce Hudson. That was a decent cup tie. I really enjoyed it, and it's been an absolute pleasure following Bottesford Town's FA Cup journey. They've made me feel so welcome in every round, but sadly I now have to say goodbye to them. I will be returning to the Barnet Steel Stadium before the season ends. I want to wish them all the best for the rest of the season, and hopefully I can come along to a promotion party in April. As for Bromsgrove Sporting, well, the road to Wembley continues with them in a couple of weeks' time. The third qualifying round draw was made yesterday, and it's a familiar tie for them. In fact, it's a repeat of this very same stage last season. They've been drawn away to Chelmsford City of the National League South. So I'll be following Bromsgrove Sporting to the Melbourne Community Stadium on September the 28th in what will be the furthest trip the FA Cup has taken me on so far, and another new ground. We're only 2 matches away from the first round proper now, so could one of these two clubs make it there? If you know your FA Cup history, this is where my alternate path got interesting. Cleethorpes Town were drawn away to 7th tier Kettering Town, who are the all-time leading goal scorers in the competition. So I'd have watched the hosts steal it with a 94th minute penalty at their Latimer Park Stadium. No additional teams entered in the third qualifying round, but the draws were still split into northern and southern sections, and Bromsgrove Sporting were drawn away to National League South side Chelmsford City. This season, I'm following the FA Cup from the extra preliminary round right through to the final in May. This is match 5 of my 14-round journey to Wembley, so if this is something you're interested in, please check out my playlist where you'll find all the previous matches, and consider subscribing to support my channel. In the last round, I watched Bromsgrove Sporting end Bottesford Town's record-breaking FA Cup run, and at the weekend I followed Sporting down to the Melbourne Community Stadium, home of Chelmsford City in Essex. Not only was this a new ground for me, but it was by far the furthest I've had to travel on my journey so far. As it was a nearly 3-hour drive and the club had let me know there was limited parking on site, I travelled down the night before so I could get to the ground nice and early. There were a lot more car parking spaces than I expected to see on site, but the football clubs share the car park with the sports centre next door, so I can imagine it gets very busy on match days. I had no issues finding a space though. As I got there a few hours before kick-off, I had plenty of time to take a walk round the corner to the Red Beret pub, which I'd read is one of the best places for away fans to visit. And it's a nice little pub, and just a couple of minutes walk from the ground. The Melbourne Community Stadium is owned by the local council and is primarily an athletics stadium, and it's an interesting layout. There's a very large main stand with 3 other small supporter areas around the pitch. It wasn't immediately very clear where you can and can't stand, but it became a little more obvious once I had a walk around the ground. There's a running track around the pitch, so the main stand and supporter areas along the touchline are quite far back, while the two standing areas behind the goal are very close to the pitch. I'd seen several reviews online that said the Melbourne Stadium isn't a great place to watch football due to how far back the main stand is, but I saw no issue with it. In fact, I felt the view from the main stand was a lot better than behind the goal. The running track does make you feel like you're a long way from the action, but the main stand is quite high up, which makes up for it. The atmosphere did feel a little flat at times, but I think that's due to how open this stadium is. My wife made the trip down to Chelmsford with me, keen to see if their food could better Bromsgrove Sporting's pork stuffing bap. And there's a food stall on site right outside the main clubhouse, so you're greeted by a very tempting smell of food when entering the stadium. My wife was a little disappointed that they didn't have any pulled pork on this occasion, but there's so much food to choose from. And it's one of the most efficient food stalls I've seen, certainly at a football ground. When we came to get some food at half time, I was a bit put off by the fairly large queue that had built up, but the staff managed to get everyone served in minutes. It was impressive, and the food is really high quality. The Claret's Bar is a decent place to get a drink too, and it shows Premier League matches. And although the Newcastle-Man City game was on when we went into the bar, it was big enough that we were able to get a seat. And along the bar it's got a list of Chelmsford City's achievements and past players, which is a nice touch. After I'd had some food, I checked out their club shop, which has a wide range of items available. I picked up this Chelmsford City scarf to go with the rest of my FA Cup memorabilia, but there's hats, bags, replica shirts and all sorts, as well as a little cabin next door with previous season's programmes, which is ideal for collectors. Once I'd finished exploring the ground, I went up to the main stand for the main event. 6th tier Chelmsford City are in their claret home shirts, while 7th tier Bromsgrove Sporting are in their green and white away kit. And instantly you could tell the hosts were up for this one. They looked fit, agile and composed on the ball. In the last round I'd seen Bottesford Town compete with a team 2 leagues above them, and considering there was only 1 league difference here, the step up was evident. Sporting's defence and goalkeeper Charlie Price were busy right away as Chelmsford had several chances in the early stages, before finally breaking down the visiting defence in the 16th minute. There were some appeals from Sporting for a foul in the build-up, but City's Jordan Greenidge nipped in to head home from close range, and this one looked like it could be a rout. Chelmsford's Kane Critchlow and Osmond Foyo looked dangerous every time they got hold of the ball, and just before half-time, Foyo found himself clean through on Price, but somehow put it over the bar. And at half-time, it was Chelmsford City 1, Bromsgrove Sporting 0. And although the visitors had defended brilliantly, they were lucky it wasn't 3 or 4 at the break. Charlie Price in goal was excellent. I took a walk around to the stand behind the goal at half-time, but a crowd of home supporters had beaten me to it. With the stand being very busy and close to the pitch, I found my view was quite obstructed, so I went back up to the main stand.
10 minutes.
The second half started off pretty much the same way the first had ended, with Chelmsford dominating, though Sporting did find themselves with the odd chance amongst the barrage of attacks coming their way. Charlie Price continued to keep his side in the game, and then on 53 minutes Foyo broke through the defence again, only to see his shot hit both posts before coming back out into the arms of Price. How close can you get without scoring? Surely this was just a matter of time. And 10 minutes later, Chelmsford did have a second. A well-worked attack found its way through to Kane Critchlow, who scored from close range. And surely there was no way back now. But if anything, Sporting started to look more lively after that second goal, and the introduction of Ryan Snape. And on 71 minutes, he hit a fierce free kick just wide of Ted Collins' post. On 90 minutes, Collins had to react well to keep out an effort from Rowe. but Bromsgrove Sporting did get a late consolation through Shaquille Leachman-Whittingham on 90+3, which led to a bit of a nervy finish for the hosts, though it never looked that likely that they'd force a replay. The final score was Chelmsford City 2, Bromsgrove Sporting 1, and Chelmsford, it's safe to say, are the best team I've seen on this road to Wembley so far. A huge amount of credit has to be given to Bromsgrove Sporting here though. They were up against it from the start, but defended brilliantly for 90 minutes, and were never completely out of this one. Man of the match for me was an easy one. It has to be Sporting goalkeeper Charlie Price. He made some top quality saves to keep the score down and looked strong in the air. The attendance was 808, which is fairly average for the Melbourne Stadium this season. I would have liked to stick with Bromsgrove Sporting for a little bit longer, but sadly I need to leave them behind. It's Chelmsford City who I'll be following into the fourth and final qualifying round in a couple of weeks' time. The National League sides enter the competition at this stage, and the draw wasn't kind to the Clarets at all. They've been drawn away to National League leaders Barnet, which is about as tough as it gets at this stage. And what a prediction this was by my friend Sam. I really enjoyed my day at the Melbourne Stadium. It's one of the strangest layouts I've come across at a football ground, but it's very hard to find any negatives about the experience. Staff are all friendly and enthusiastic, the food is excellent, they have an impressive clubhouse, and everything seems really well organised. I will be returning to the UK Electrical Stadium in Bromsgrove before the season ends, but for now my next destination is Barnet's Hive Stadium in a couple of weeks' time. Please consider subscribing to my channel if you're enjoying the journey so far, and please let me know in the comments if you have any recommendations for hotels or things to do near Barnet's new ground. Thanks for watching, and thank you to Chelmsford City for making me feel so welcome on Saturday. My alternate path would now have seen me follow Kettering Town as they travel to Westwood Road, home of St Ives Town, who play in the same league. And the competition's top scorers breezed through to the fourth qualifying round, winning 3-0. The fourth qualifying round is where all the National League teams enter the competition. That's every team from England's fifth and non-league football's top tier. And a very tricky tie for Chelmsford. They were drawn away to highest ranked team at this stage, Barnet. So this is it. After 10 weeks, 2 preliminary and 3 qualifying rounds, we've arrived at the fourth and final qualifying round of this season's FA Cup. My journey started at 9th tier Hucknall Town, where they narrowly lost 3-2 to Bottesford Town. I then followed Bottesford Town for their 2 home victories against Winterton Rangers and Loughborough Students, before their run ended in Worcestershire at the hands of Bromsgrove Sporting. Sporting were given a very tricky away tie to National League South side Chelmsford City, which proved to be one step too far, and as a result I followed Chelmsford down to Barnet's Hive Stadium on Saturday. With Barnet currently leading the way in the National League, this was the toughest draw Chelmsford could have been given, but after watching the way they played against Bromsgrove and looking through match highlights on their YouTube channel, it's clear that they're a very capable side. Barnet had to be huge favourites for this one though. I haven't been to many grounds in this part of the country, so the Hive was a new one for me. It was very easy to find and has a huge car park. I was there early, so I didn't have to fight for a parking space, but I can imagine it fills up very quickly on match days. The Hive is more of a sports complex than just a football stadium, as there are numerous 3G pitches on site, a gym, a conference room, and a nice little cafe that looks right out onto the pitch. As well as Barnet, the Hive is home to women's team London Bees, and it was used by Tottenham Hotspur's women until 2022. It has a capacity of 6,500, and although it's missing a stand on the south side of the ground, it's a nice stadium, and a really good place to watch football. I was in the away end, and my view was fantastic. Before the game though, I wanted to get some food and check out the club shop. I had a ham and cheese toastie at the Hive Bar Cafe, which is run by Starbucks, then went on the hunt for the club shop. Finding the shop wasn't easy though. Online it said it was open all day on match days, and from what I could see by the pictures, it should have been right next to the cafe, but it wasn't. No issues though. I nipped into the main reception and the staff were happy to help. It turns out the club shop had recently been moved to the other side of the ground, so I took a wander. The only problem with that is it's now located behind the home turnstiles, so I wasn't able to go in with my away ticket. I'd just have to get my souvenir after the game if it was still open. So off I went to the away end, located on the northern side of the stadium. I went in really early, but there was still a queue, so I could tell that Chelmsford had brought a lot of fans. And the away supporters get their own bar. It's a huge open space underneath the north stand that has Sky Sports playing. When I got there, it had already started to fill up with lively away fans. There's a burger bar just inside the away turnstiles, so I had to sample the food again. I went for a big greasy cheeseburger, which was pretty standard for a football ground, but you will pay London prices. My cheeseburger was £7.50, and it was nowhere near as good as the food at Chelmsford or Bromsgrove. I'm not saying Barnet's food is poor, far from it, just that those other clubs are exceptional in that area. Chelmsford lead the way with their food as far as I'm concerned, but my wife is still adamant that Bromsgrove's is better. It might not have the best food I've come across, but Barnet's Hive Stadium is certainly the best place to watch a game that I've come across on this journey. Look at how good my view was from the away end. In the north stand you're pretty well covered too, as I discovered when the torrential rain arrived about 10 minutes before kick-off. The rain stopped just before the two teams came out though, and the Chelmsford City fans were well up for this one. So National League leaders Barnet take on National League South Chelmsford City for a place in the first round, and a chance to take on one of the teams from Leagues 1 or 2. Barnet are in their orange home kit, while Chelmsford are in their white away kit. Can they produce a shock here? In the early stages, Chelmsford's Osmond Foyo and Jordan Greenwich, who had terrorised Bromsgrove, looked lively. Greenwich had the first clear chance of the game, but headed wide, and Barnet seemed to wake up after that early scare and started upping the tempo. On 26 minutes, they deservedly took the lead through Callum Stead from close range. Chelmsford was still in the game until just before half-time when they were caught out at the back. Bailey Hobson played a low cross into Stead, who scored his second. 2-0 to Barnet at half-time, a little unfair on the visitors, but the home side's quality was starting to show. I didn't think there was any way back into this one at 2-0, but you never know in the cup. At half-time I was treated to this nice little memory of one of my previous FA Cup trips. The second half started with Barnet looking dangerous. At this point, I was starting to think a Barnet third was a lot more likely than any sort of Chelmsford fight back. But then Osmond Foyo powered through the Barnet defence, only to be denied brilliantly by Nick Hayes in the home goal. The turning point, if you can call it that, at 2-0, came just after the hour mark when a clumsy tackle on Ryan Glover from Arthur Penny was punished with a red card. I've watched this foul a few times now and I think a yellow would have been fair, but a red card seems really harsh, and that totally killed any chance of a fight back. Ryan Glover made it 3-0 on 75 minutes, and now the 10 men just had to focus on keeping the score down. Ted Collins had a decent game in the Chelmsford goal, but he found himself powerless when Barnet broke through his defence once again on 90 minutes. The ball came across to Zach Brunt, who lobbed it over the on-rushing Collins to make it 4-0, and that's how it stayed until the 9 minutes of time added on were up. I thought 4-0 was really harsh on Chelmsford, but their fans didn't stop singing throughout, and despite the heavy scoreline, they celebrated their players after the final whistle. The attendance was 1,503, and it's difficult to pick a man of the match after a performance like that, but I'm going with Barnet's Callum Stead for his 2 goals. I can see why Barnet are top of the National League. They're very well organised and looked solid from back to front, and didn't give anything away, even when the game was effectively won at 3-0. I doubt many Football League clubs would want to come down to the Hive in the first round, but as it turns out, they won't be. In Monday night's draw, Barnet were given an away tie at League One Exeter City, which is a really tough fixture, but I wouldn't rule them out. Should the League One side have an off day, Barnet are capable of causing an upset there. Despite Exeter being a lot further than anywhere else I've travelled on this journey so far, I can't wait for that game. I was really happy that I did manage to get into the club shop after the match. The guy working there was just about to close, so I really appreciated him being patient enough to let me have a look around and get my souvenir. He was really friendly and told me he supports Manchester United, who Barnet would have played last season had they won their replay against Newport. And it's a decent club shop. It looks a little understocked in my video as I went after the match, but there was still a lot of good quality items on sale. I came away with a Barnet hat, and there was no physical copy of the match programme, so I'd have to download that online. So I have to say goodbye to Chelmsford City. I'll be returning to the Melbourne Stadium for a recap before the season ends, but it's Barnet who I'll be following into the first round of the FA Cup. I'll be making a compilation of my FA Cup qualifying round journey over the next few days, so please consider subscribing to my channel if that interests you. The Hive is a great place to watch football. It's easy to find, there's plenty of parking, and you can even see the Wembley Arch from the top of the road. So thanks for watching, and if you're a Barnet fan, I'll see you at Exeter St James's Park in a few weeks. My alternate path saw Kettering drawn away to National League North side Farsley Celtic, who play at the Citadel, which was undergoing some developments. As a result, that tie was played at Guiseley's Nethermore Park, and Kettering stunned their hosts, winning 2-1 to put themselves into the first round proper. The first round draw took place the following Monday, and this is where all the teams from Leagues 1 and 2 entered the competition. My alternate path has actually been selected for live coverage. It's League 1 Northampton Town against 7th tier Kettering Town, which is a bit of a local derby, and a fantastic draw for Kettering. I'll be off to Exeter City St James's Park to continue my Road to Wembley series though. It's League 1 Exeter against National League leaders Barnet, and I'm expecting that to be a fantastic game. So if you want to see where this journey goes next, please consider subscribing to my channel. I'll be posting a first round preview video a few days before I travel down to Exeter. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, why not check out my FA Cup Road to Wembley playlist.